Good evening, everybody. August 27th, 2021. Bitcoin had some good pump action today, but unfortunately down on the micro, we don't really have a clear view on what it's doing. It's certainly not impulsive up at the moment. We might be making some sort of diagonal or something. I'll go into that a little bit here. But this has done one thing quite clearly, which is just continue to make things complicated. I said that yesterday as well. With this action, it made it really complicated. This action made it even more complicated, and now it's like very, very complex. Whatever it's doing is exceedingly complex here. So what we are looking at now is a few different possibilities. This possibility here, I think, is probably out the way that it's drawn. We may have gotten, let me get rid of some of these fibs here and just kind of take this from the top. If this move down, I mentioned that this move down could potentially be a very overlapping diagonal down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like so. If it did do that, then we basically have kind of like a megaphone pattern that it did here, right? Kind of expanded downwards, which can happen in diagonals. And it's in the bearish view of this, that could be 5 waves within an A wave, like this, where we get an A here. We're now bouncing in the B, and then C stretches down further, and within this C then we'll get another kind of overlapping messy 5 waves down, something along those lines. Obviously this is, I don't have any specifics here on what that might look like, but we can draw anyway a fib extension and see where the C wave might go, if that is in fact what it's doing. I'm not convinced that it is. Let me change the color on this to make it a little clearer. So C waves typically 618 to 1236. So if it does break down, that would be the region somewhere in here that I would look for the C wave to bottom in. But again, that may mean that it breaks this 46K region, which I think probably leads us down even further. So again, making it much more complex. All of the kind of supports that we had don't necessarily mean as much anymore just because of all of this chop. But I'm going to leave this big green box on here, and I'll leave that red ABC there like that. Let me just change this because it's sort of now even a different possibility than what we had before. I'm going to make that orange. Okay, so there is one possibility. All right, if I go down onto the micro chart instead, best I could reason here, we may have sort of a diagonal up. Off the low, we get like either a 1 and a 2 here, or a 1 and a 2 here, and then we just probably hit top in 3, and we'll come down in a 4, and then go up in a 5, something like that. And then our parallel channel would be drawn from 1 to 3 and tagged down to like the area of 2. It's not super clear here. Obviously this is all quite strange, but if we get this, if we come down and sort of touch the bottom of this channel here, maybe around 48, and then punch up above, we might get a very ugly 5 waves up in a diagonal. And it's Bitcoin, so of course it can just continue pressing upwards if it wants and not really give a clear indication of what it's doing, and we'll kind of have to keep an eye on that as it goes forward. I still think it kind of topped out right around where this topped out, and I was looking at it broke that being an initial indication, then maybe the correction is over. So that is still the case. If it breaks above that, it is probably an indication, preliminary anyway, that the correction's over. But with how ugly this is, it's really not a clear-cut case. Above this high would strengthen that case quite a bit. So that's above like 50.5, wherever that reached. That would strengthen that. But even so, especially if it follows this path, it would still be, just 5 up there. Maybe it goes 5, a little higher, breaks that high. I would still then expect some sort of pullback down. So I would be very, very surprised, basically, if this just pumped like crazy from here. I'm not seeing any indication from this price action that that is what's going to happen. Even the volume really is not all that fantastic. Like, we've got a couple little spikes, but they're nothing compared to some of the spikes that we've had previously. And we are now going into the weekend, which is always a tricky time to trade. We may very well see stop hunts in either direction. So I can't really give you a good picture on even what the short term looks like. We're kind of at a pivot point here. I would say it makes sense. This is resistance that we struck here, a little micro resistance. So it would make sense for us to come down and test that, even if we are going to go up. So if we hold 48, I'd say there's a decent chance of going up to test that 50.5K high again. But if we break down below that, then I think it's more likely that we're going to start doing something like this and proceed downwards in a larger C wave. So I think that's as clear, unfortunately, even though it's not clear at all. I think that's as clear as we can be right now. So let's keep an eye on 48K as a preliminary support level that really should hold, and follow through from the bulls should take us above the 50.5 high. And then if we break down below 48K, then I think we're probably on our way down, at least to test again down here, maybe a double bottom at best. That would fulfill the ABC. That would technically fulfill it, to do a little double bottom thing there, right there between the 618 and the 764 of this fib extension. But it could even go a little bit lower, 44 to 45 in that region, to fulfill that C wave as well. So I think 48K is probably a good region to keep a close eye on for the moment, to hold support and keep the pressure to the upside. But be very, very careful trading this region if you are attempting it. Personally, I am just going to sit tight. If we get this to fill out, then I will look to put some of my cash back in. But I do still have Bitcoin, and I picked some up in this region, like I said I was going to do, where I closed my shorts. But I am still sitting on like 40% cash, somewhere in that range. I picked up a decent amount of alt exposure in this range too, on some of the alt charts that I've been tracking that look really good. So even if it does go up, I am exposed enough to crypto that I feel like I'm going to get a good return, even if it goes without me. But I certainly wouldn't suggest not being exposed to crypto at all. In this area, the expectation still is that it's going to go significantly higher, even if it does come down first. So, but I do like to have that cash reserve for if we do get that spike down, which at the moment still looks not necessarily likely, but very possible. So we'll see what the overnight action brings, and if it brings any further clarity, I'll update tomorrow. But for the moment, have a good night, everybody.